You look more domestic. Celeste Vanderbilt sneered, her pearls gleaming as laughter rippled across the opulent dining hall. In that moment, Danielle Whitmore, a proud black mother, faced a public humiliation that would ignite a firestorm. Her daughter Lauren's $700 million merger with Novacor Group hung in the balance, but what happened next shook boardrooms and sparked a global movement. Would Danielle's defiance topple an empire, or would the Vanderbilts' arrogance prevail? Stay tuned to uncover the shocking twists in this tale of dignity and retribution. If you're as gripped as we are, hit that subscribe button to catch our latest stories and drop a comment sharing where you're watching from. Can Danielle turn an insult into a legacy? Will Novacor crumble under the weight of its hubris? Watch to find out. The Grand Meridian Hotel stood like a beacon of ambition under Miami's relentless June sun, its glass walls throwing prisms of light across the palm-lined boulevard. The air hummed with the kind of electric anticipation that only a city on the cusp of a historic deal could muster. Inside, the lobby was a symphony of polished marble, clinking crystal, and murmured power plays, where executives in tailored suits moved like chess pieces across a board only they could see. At precisely 11:47 a.m., a sleek black sedan purred to a stop at the hotel's entrance, and Danielle Whitmore, 50 years old and unyielding as the oak trees of her childhood, stepped out. Her emerald dress caught the light, its clean lines hugging her frame with a quiet elegance that needed no labels to scream quality. Silver streaked her hair, swept into an updo that spoke of care and intention, each strand a testament to a life of resilience. Her eyes, sharp and warm, carried the weight of years spent raising Lauren, her only daughter, through sleepless nights and hard-won triumphs. Today was Lauren's day, the culmination of her tech firm Horizon Dynamics' audacious $700 million merger with the Novacor Group, a white-owned luxury conglomerate whose name was synonymous with old money and older prejudices. Danielle was here not as a spectator, but as a pillar, the woman who taught Lauren to build empires without bending. She adjusted the thin gold bracelet on her wrist, a gift from her late mother, and took a breath. The valet, a young man with a nervous smile, scrambled to open her door, but Danielle was already moving, her low heels clicking against the pavement with purpose. She carried a small clutch, its leather soft from years of use, and her posture, shoulders back, chin high, was that of a woman who'd walked through fire and emerged with her dignity intact. The hotel doors parted, and a wave of cool air greeted her, laced with the scent of jasmine and ambition. Inside, the lobby buzzed. Chandeliers cast golden glows over clusters of suits, their voices a low hum of deal-making and posturing. Danielle's eyes scanned the room, searching for Lauren. She spotted her near the entrance to the private dining hall, radiant in a cream blazer, her curls framing a face alight with pride. Lauren waved, her smile wide enough to bridge the years of sacrifice that had brought them here. "Mom, over here," she called, her voice cutting through the din. Danielle's heart swelled, but she kept her stride steady, her expression composed. This was Lauren's moment, and she wouldn't steal it with overt displays. She was here to witness, to support, to be the quiet strength in the room. As she crossed the lobby, heads turned, not out of recognition, but curiosity. Who was this woman, moving with such assured grace through a sea of power brokers? Her dress was impeccable, her presence undeniable, yet something about her didn't fit their mold. She felt the weight of their gazes, the subtle calculations, but she'd long ago learned to let such scrutiny slide off her like rain. She was almost at Lauren's side when a sharp voice sliced through the air. "Excuse me, ma'am," said a staffer, a young woman in a navy blazer, stepping into Danielle's path. Her badge read Marissa, and her tone was polite but firm, the kind reserved for redirecting strays. "Service staff, use the side entrance. It's just around the corner to your left." The words landed like a slap, though Danielle's face betrayed nothing. Her lips curved into a tight, practiced smile, one she'd worn too many times before. "I'm not staff," she said, her voice low but clear, each syllable deliberate. "I'm here for the merger luncheon. My daughter is Lauren Whitmore." Marissa blinked, her confidence faltering. "Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't realize." She fumbled with her clipboard, scanning a list as if it might absolve her. "Your name, please?" "Danielle Whitmore," she replied, her gaze steady, holding Marissa's until the younger woman looked away. The apology hung in the air, hollow and insufficient. Danielle knew this moment, had lived it in department stores, boardrooms, even parent-teacher conferences. The assumption, the quick judgment based on the color of her skin and the cut of her clothes. It wasn't new, but it never stopped stinging. Marissa stepped aside, gesturing toward the dining hall. "Right this way, Ms. Whitmore. My apologies again." Danielle nodded, her smile fading as she moved past. The encounter was brief, but it left a mark, a small crack in the pride she'd carried into this day. She shook it off, focusing on Lauren, who was now surrounded by NovaCore executives, her laughter bright and infectious. Danielle's chest tightened with a mother's love, tempered by the knowledge that this world, Lauren's world, was one she'd fought to enter, not one that welcomed her kind without question. She reached Lauren's side and her daughter's hand found hers, squeezing lightly. "You look stunning, Mom," Lauren whispered, her eyes gleaming. "Ready to celebrate?" "Always," Danielle replied, her voice warm but tinged with the weight of what had just passed. She wouldn't tell Lauren, not now. This was her daughter's triumph, and she wouldn't let a stranger's ignorance dim it. But as they moved toward the dining hall, where crystal glasses and power awaited, Danielle felt a shift inside her, a quiet resolve hardening like steel. The doors to the dining hall opened, revealing a room of opulence, long tables draped in white linen, floral centerpieces towering like small monuments, and the soft clink of champagne flutes being filled. The NovaCore group's elite mingled, their laughter a practiced melody. Danielle's eyes scanned the crowd, landing on Harrison and Celeste Vanderbilt, the couple at the helm of NovaCore. Harrison, with his slicked-back gray hair and perpetual smirk, stood like a king surveying his court. Celeste, draped in a cream silk dress and heavy pearls, held a flute of champagne, her smile sharp as a blade. Lauren led Danielle to their table, introducing her to board members with a pride that made Danielle's heart ache. "This is my mother, Danielle Whitmore," Lauren said, her voice carrying over the hum. "She's the reason I'm here." The executives nodded, their smiles polite but distant, their eyes appraising. Danielle met their gaze unflinching, her presence a silent challenge to their assumptions. As she took her seat, the weight of the room pressed against her, the wealth, the power, the unspoken rules. She was here for Lauren, for the empire her daughter had built from late nights and relentless grit. But the staffer's words echoed in her mind, a reminder of the barriers that still stood, even in rooms like this. Danielle straightened, her hands resting calmly in her lap. She was no stranger to battles, and if this day held more than celebration, she was ready. The merger was about to be signed, but for Danielle Whitmore, the real story was just beginning. The dining hall of the Grand Meridian Hotel shimmered with the kind of decadence that made time feel irrelevant. Crystal chandeliers cast golden flecks across white linen tablecloths, and the air was thick with the scent of truffle oil and ambition. Waiters glided silently, balancing trays of champagne flutes that caught the light like tiny prisms. At the center of it all, Danielle Whitmore sat beside her daughter, Lauren, her emerald dress a quiet rebellion against the room's muted palette of creams and grays. The earlier sting of the staffer's assumption lingered, but Danielle buried it beneath a composed smile, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She was here for Lauren, whose tech firm, Horizon Dynamics, was moments away from sealing a $700 million merger with the NovaCore Group. This was no time for distraction. Lauren leaned in, her cream blazer pristine, her voice a warm whisper. "You okay, Mom? You seem quiet." Danielle's eyes softened, meeting her daughter's. "Just taking it all in, baby," she said, her tone steady. Lauren nodded, reassured, and turned to answer a question from a NovaCore board member, her laughter bright and effortless. Danielle watched her, pride swelling like a tide. Lauren was a force, 32, brilliant, unapologetic, navigating this room of power brokers with the ease of someone born to it, though Danielle knew the sacrifices that had carved that path. She'd raised Lauren alone, working double shifts as a nurse, teaching her to dream bigger than the world's low expectations. Today was proof of that. Across the table, Harrison and Celeste Vanderbilt held court. Harrison, 60, with slicked-back gray hair and a jawline that seemed chiseled for boardroom battles, sipped his scotch, his eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Celeste, 55, was a vision of calculated elegance. Cream silk dress, pearls heavy against her collarbone, blonde hair swept into a flawless chignon. Her smile was a weapon, sharp and fleeting, deployed only when it served her. They were the Novacore Group's beating heart, old money wrapped in modern ambition, and their presence commanded the room's gravity. Danielle observed them quietly, noting the way Harrison's hand rested possessively on Celeste's arm, the way Celeste's gaze flicked over guests, assessing, dismissing. Lauren stood to speak, her voice cutting through the hum. Ladies and gentlemen, today marks a new chapter for Horizon Dynamics and Novacore Group. This merger isn't just about numbers. It's about building a future where innovation meets impact. The room applauded, glasses raised in a glittering toast. Lauren gestured to Danielle. And I'd like to introduce someone who made this possible. My mother, Danielle Whitmore. Everything I am, I owe to her. The applause continued, but Danielle felt a shift, a subtle cooling in the air. Eyes turned to her, some curious, others appraising, a few dismissive. She rose briefly, nodding with a grace that belied the weight of their scrutiny. Thank you, she said simply, her voice clear, and sat again. Lauren beamed, oblivious to the undercurrent, but Danielle felt it, the way certain gazes lingered too long, the way whispers rippled at the edges of the room. Celeste Vanderbilt leaned forward, her pearls clicking softly. Your mother? She said, her tone honeyed, but laced with something colder. She tilted her head, studying Danielle as if she were a curiosity in a museum. I would have guessed you were... help, perhaps. Our housekeeper wears a similar shade of green. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and a few guests chuckled, the sound sharp and brittle. The table fell silent, the clink of cutlery pausing as if the room itself held its breath. Danielle's hands tightened in her lap, her nails pressing into her palms. She felt Lauren stiffen beside her, her daughter's breath catching. Harrison leaned back, his smirk widening. Come now, Celeste. Don't be harsh, he said, his voice dripping with mock chivalry. But really, Ms. Whitmore, you must admit, it's hard to picture you raising a tech prodigy. You look more... domestic. He chuckled, swirling his scotch, as if the insult were a casual jest. The word landed like a blade, slicing through the room's veneer of civility. Danielle's pulse quickened, but her face remained a mask of calm, her eyes locked on Celeste. She'd faced this before, assumptions cloaked in smiles, barbs dressed as compliments. But here, in this room, with her daughter's triumph on display, it burned deeper. Lauren's hand found hers under the table, squeezing hard, a silent plea for restraint. But Danielle's silence wasn't surrender. It was a gathering storm. She tilted her head slightly, her gaze unwavering. You'll pay a price for that insult, Mr. and Mrs. Vanderbilt, she said, her voice low, each word deliberate, carrying the weight of a vow. Mark my words. The room seemed to contract, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Celeste's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, her eyes narrowing. Harrison's smirk froze, his glass pausing midair. The other guests shifted uncomfortably, their laughter replaced by uneasy glances. Lauren's jaw tightened, her eyes flashing with fury. She opened her mouth to speak, but Danielle's hand squeezed hers, a silent command. Not now. Lauren swallowed her words, but her gaze burned, promising a reckoning. The moment stretched, taut as a wire, until Celeste waved a manicured hand, dismissing the exchange. Oh, let's not be dramatic, she said, her tone light but edged with steel. I'm sure Ms. Whitmore understands a little humor. She sipped her champagne, turning to a board member as if nothing had happened. But something had. The insult hung in the air, a stain no amount of champagne could wash away. Danielle's heart pounded, but she forced her breathing to steady, her hands unclenching. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction, not yet. She glanced at Lauren, whose face was a mask of controlled rage, and gave her a small nod. This wasn't the place for a fight, but the battle lines had been drawn. The lunch continued, voices rising again, the clatter of plates resuming. Novacore executives droned on about synergies and market shares, oblivious to the fault line that had just cracked open. Danielle listened, her expression serene, but inside her mind was alight. She thought of her mother, who'd scrubbed floors to send her to college, of the nights she'd stayed up sewing Lauren's school uniforms to save money, of every door slammed in her face because of who she was. This moment, this room was no different, just a shinier version of the same old story. She leaned toward Lauren, her voice barely a whisper. "Focus on your moment, baby. They don't get to take that from you." Lauren nodded, her eyes still fierce, and returned to the conversation, her poise unbroken. But Danielle knew her daughter, knew the fire that burned beneath that calm exterior. This wasn't over. As the meal drew to a close, Harrison stood, raising his glass. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice booming, his eyes avoiding Danielle's. The room echoed his toast, but Danielle didn't lift her glass. She sat still, her gaze fixed on the Vanderbilts, their smug certainty a challenge she'd meet in time. The merger papers lay unsigned on the table, a stack of promises waiting to be sealed. But for Danielle Whitmore, the real contract was the one she just made with herself, to ensure that disrespect, no matter how gilded, would not go unanswered. The Miami skyline glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of Lauren Whitmore's penthouse, a constellation of glass and steel that seemed to pulse with the city's restless ambition. It was just past 9 p.m., and the air inside was thick with the aftermath of the day's wounds. The Grand Meridian's dining hall, with its clinking champagne flutes and venomous smiles, felt a world away. But the sting of Celeste and Harrison Vanderbilt's insults clung to Danielle Whitmore like damp heat. She sat on a plush gray sofa, her emerald dress swapped for a soft cotton tunic, her silver-streaked hair loose around her shoulders. A cup of chamomile tea steamed in her hands, its warmth a small anchor against the storm brewing in her chest. Across the room Lauren paced, her cream blazer discarded, her sleeveless blouse revealing arms tensed with fury. "They humiliated you, Mom," Lauren said, her voice sharp, cutting through the penthouse's quiet hum. "Celeste called you help. Harrison said you looked domestic, in front of everyone." She stopped, her curls bouncing as she turned to face Danielle, her eyes blazing. "We can't let this slide. We can't sign that merger like nothing happened." Danielle sipped her tea, her face unreadable, though her pulse betrayed her calm. The Vanderbilts' words had sliced deep, not because they were new, she'd heard variations her whole life, but because they'd been aimed at her in Lauren's moment of triumph. She set the cup down, her movements deliberate, and met her daughter's gaze. "This isn't about me, baby," she said, her voice low, steady, but carrying a weight that filled the room. "It's about what Horizon stands for. You built this company on integrity. Can you merge with people who'd spit on your blood and call it a joke?" Lauren froze, the question hanging like a guillotine. She crossed her arms, her jaw tight, and resumed pacing, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. The penthouse was a study in modern elegance. White walls, sleek furniture, a single orchid blooming defiantly on the coffee table. But it felt like a war room now, the stakes higher than any boardroom deal. Lauren stopped at the window, her reflection a ghost against the city lights. "That merger is $700 million, Mom," she said, her voice softer now, laced with the weight of responsibility. "It's not just me. It's my team, our investors, the thousands of jobs we'd create. Walking away. It's not simple." Danielle rose, her tunic swaying, as she crossed to Lauren's side. She placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder, her touch firm but gentle, grounding. "Nothing worth having ever is," she said. "You think I raised you to chase checks over principles? You think I worked double shifts, missed your recitals, so you could sit at a table with people who'd rather see you sweep their floors?" Lauren's eyes welled, but she blinked the tears away, her resolve hardening. She turned to face Danielle, searching her mother's face, those deep brown eyes that had always seen through her fears, that had guided her from a girl with big dreams to a woman who made them real. "You're right," she whispered almost to herself. "But if we pull out, Novacore will come for us. The Vanderbilts don't lose quietly. They'll spin it, make us the villains. Let them try, Danielle said, her voice a quiet thunder. Truth doesn't need a PR team to stand tall. You show the world who they are, and they'll crumble under their own weight. She paused, her gaze softening. But this is your call, Lauren. I'll stand by you, whatever you choose. The room fell silent, save for the distant hum of the city below. Lauren's mind raced, weighing the risks, the investors who'd balk, the headlines that'd swarm, the legal battles Novacor could wage. But then she thought of her mother, Danielle, who'd faced down landlords, bosses, and bigots with nothing but her spine and her smarts. She thought of the staffers' assumption at the hotel, the Vanderbilts' sneers, the way the room had laughed. Her hands clenched into fists, and something inside her snapped into place. She crossed to her laptop on the dining table, its screen glowing with the merger documents. "I'm done," she said, her voice resolute. "We're out." She opened a new email, addressing it to her board and key advisors. Her fingers flew across the keys, drafting a statement that was as sharp as it was final. Horizon Dynamics is withdrawing from the proposed merger with Novacor Group due to irreconcilable differences in values. We remain committed to our mission of innovation with integrity. Danielle watched, pride swelling in her chest like a rising tide. She'd always known Lauren was fierce, but this was the fire she'd prayed her daughter would wield. "You sure?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Lauren hit send, the soft click of the keyboard echoing like a gavel. "I've never been sure," she said, turning to her mother. "They don't get to disrespect you and walk away with my company." Her voice trembled, not with doubt, but with the weight of what she'd just done. She'd rolled the dice on a $700 million future, betting on principle over profit. Danielle stepped closer, pulling Lauren into a hug. "You're doing what's right," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Let the world see who they really are." Lauren nodded against her shoulder, her arms tightening around her mother. For a moment they stood there, two women bound by love and steel, unshaken by the storm they'd just unleashed. Lauren pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I need to call the team," she said, already reaching for her phone. "They need to hear this from me before it leaks." She dialed her COO, Marcus, her voice steady as she briefed him. "We're out of the Novacor deal. I'll explain more tomorrow, but start prepping the staff. It's going to get loud." Danielle returned to the sofa, picking up her tea, though it had gone cold. She stared out at the skyline, her mind turning. She knew what was coming: the media frenzy, the investor panic, the Vanderbilts' inevitable counterattack. Novacor wouldn't take this lying down. Harrison and Celeste were too proud, too entrenched in their privilege, to let a black woman and her daughter upend their empire without a fight. But Danielle wasn't afraid. She'd faced worse than their kind and come out standing. As Lauren's voice filled the room, calm and commanding, Danielle thought of her own mother, who taught her to hold her head high when the world tried to push her down. She thought of the nights she'd spent teaching Lauren to read, to question, to fight. This moment, this decision, was the fruit of those years, a legacy not of wealth, but of courage. Lauren hung up, exhaling. "It's done," she said, sinking onto the sofa beside Danielle. "Marcus is rallying the team. By morning, the world will know." Danielle nodded, her eyes on the horizon. "And when they do," she said, "they'll see what happens when you try to break a Whitmore." Her voice was soft, but it carried a promise, a warning to the Vanderbilts and anyone else who'd dare to test them. The merger was dead, but the real fight was just beginning, and Danielle Whitmore was ready for war. The Miami dawn broke with a vengeance, painting the sky in streaks of orange and fury that mirrored the storm about to engulf the corporate world. By 6 a.m., the news had detonated across tech blogs and financial feeds. Horizon Dynamics cancels $700 million merger with Novacor Group. The headline was a spark in a tinderbox, igniting speculation that crackled through social media and morning talk shows. In her modest Coconut Grove bungalow, Danielle Whitmore sat at her kitchen table, a chipped ceramic mug of coffee in hand, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a loose bun. The TV droned in the background, a business anchor dissecting the merger's collapse with the gravitas of a war report. Danielle's eyes, sharp and unyielding, flicked to her phone, where notifications piled up. Texts from friends, alerts from news apps, a missed call from Lauren. The world was waking to the bomb her daughter had dropped, and the fallout was already seismic. Lauren's penthouse 30 miles away was a hive of controlled chaos. Her team huddled around a glass conference table, laptops open, voices overlapping. Lauren, in a navy sweater and jeans, stood at the head, her curls tied back, her face a mask of determination. "We stick to the statement," she said, her voice cutting through the din. "No leaks, no speculation. We control the narrative." Her COO, Marcus, nodded, but his brow furrowed. "The investors are spooked, Lauren. They want answers, and irreconcilable differences isn't cutting it." Lauren's jaw tightened. She knew the risks when she hit send last night, but the reality, angry voicemails, plummeting stock tickers, was heavier than she'd braced for. Across town in their Coral Gables mansion, Harrison and Celeste Vanderbilt sipped espresso in a dining room that gleamed with old money polish. The morning's headlines lay spread across their mahogany table, each one a jab to their carefully curated empire. Harrison's gray hair was still damp from his shower, his silk robe barely concealing his irritation. "Arrogant upstart," he muttered, tossing a tablet aside. "They think they can walk away and leave us looking like fools?" Celeste, in a cream cashmere robe, her pearls already in place, scrolled through her phone, her lips a thin line. "They're not just walking away, Harrison. They're trying to burn us down." Her voice was ice, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. She opened X, her fingers flying as she crafted a post. "Horizon Dynamics' arrogance and deceit have sabotaged a landmark deal. Their leadership is unfit for global markets. Your Novacor strong." The post went live at 8:17 a.m., and within minutes it was a wildfire. Thousands of shares, retweets, and comments flooded the platform, painting Lauren as a reckless ingenue and Horizon as a house of cards. Hashtags like "Watch Horizon Fail" and "Why Novacor Betrayed" trended, fueled by bots and loyalists who saw Novacor as untouchable. By 10 a.m., Horizon's stock had dipped 4%, a bruise that stung investors' confidence. In their mansion, Harrison and Celeste clinked their espresso cups, smug in their counterstrike. They'd flipped the script, or so they thought, casting themselves as victims of a petulant startup's tantrum. Danielle, still at her kitchen table, saw the post on her phone. Her coffee had gone cold, but her resolve burned hotter than ever. She read Celeste's words, each one a calculated dagger, and felt a familiar anger rise. Not the kind that exploded, but the kind that simmered, patient and precise. She'd faced women like Celeste before, women who wielded privilege like a whip, expecting the world to bow. But Danielle Whitmore didn't bow. She dialed Lauren, her voice calm but ironclad. "It's time, sweetheart," she said when Lauren answered. "They're spinning lies. You tell the truth and let it cut deeper than their money ever could." Lauren exhaled, the weight of her mother's words grounding her. "I'm scared, Mom," she admitted, her voice low, meant only for Danielle. "This could tank us. The board's already circling." Danielle's response was swift, unwavering. "You're not alone, Lauren. You've got me, your team, and the truth. That's more than they'll ever have." Lauren nodded, though her mother couldn't see it, and hung up. She turned to Marcus. "Schedule a live stream for tomorrow, 8 p.m. We're going public with everything." Back in Coconut Grove, Danielle rose from the table, her movements deliberate. She crossed to her living room, where a framed photo of her and Lauren at her college graduation sat on the mantel. Lauren's smile in that picture, wide, fearless, mirrored the woman she'd become. Danielle touched the frame, her fingers lingering. She wasn't naive. She knew the Vanderbilt's post was just the opening salvo. Novacor had the resources to bury Horizon in lawsuits, smear campaigns, anything to save face. But Danielle had something they didn't, a lifetime of standing tall when the world tried to shrink her. She spent the day preparing, not for war, but for clarity. She called old friends, community leaders, even her pastor, not to rally them, but to ground herself. Their voices reminded her of who she was, who Lauren was fighting for. By noon, the media frenzy had escalated. Tech Pulse ran a piece titled "Horizon's Reckless Gambit, a $700 million blunder." While Forbes speculated about Lauren's inexperience, cable news anchors debated whether Horizon's move was a bold stand or a fatal misstep. On X, the narrative was uglier. Trolls called Lauren entitled unstable, a diversity hire who'd bitten the hand that fed her. The attacks weren't just professional, they were personal, laced with the kind of venom reserved for those who dared challenge the status quo. Danielle saw it all, her phone buzzing with screenshots from friends. Each post was a needle, but she didn't flinch. She'd taught Lauren to weather storms, and this was just the first gust. In the Vanderbilt mansion, Celeste scrolled through the trending hashtags, her smile tight but triumphant. "They're crumbling," she told Harrison, pouring herself a second espresso. "By tomorrow, Horizon will be begging to renegotiate." Harrison nodded, but his eyes lingered on a comment under Celeste's post. "Sounds like Novacore's hiding something. Why would Horizon really walk? It had 2,000 likes and counting." He pushed the thought aside, chalking it up to noise. They were untouchable, their empire built on decades of deals and deference. One black woman and her daughter couldn't change that, but the tide was already shifting. In online forums, whispers grew. Former Novacore employees sharing stories of elitism, vendors recalling snubs. A caterer posted about being told to stay out of sight at a Novacore gala. The posts were small, scattered, but they were seeds taking root in the fertile ground of public doubt. Danielle, unaware of these murmurs, spent the afternoon in her garden, pruning hibiscus with steady hands. She didn't need X to tell her the Vanderbilt's facade was cracking. She'd seen their kind unravel before, undone by their own arrogance. As dusk fell, Lauren called again. "The live stream's set," she said, her voice steadier now. "I'm ready, Mom, but I want you there with me. They need to hear it from you, too." Danielle paused, her pruning shears still in hand. She hadn't planned to step into the spotlight, but Lauren's words stirred something deep, a recognition that this wasn't just her daughter's fight, but theirs. "I'll be there," she said, her voice a vow. "Let's show them what Whitmores are made of." The sun sank below the horizon, and Miami's lights flared to life, a city poised for a reckoning. The Vanderbilt's post had drawn first blood, but Danielle and Lauren were ready to strike back, not with venom, but with truth. The world was watching, and the backlash was only the beginning. The Miami night pulsed with a restless energy, its skyline a jagged crown of light against the inky sky. At 8 p.m. sharp, Horizon Dynamics livestream flickered to life, beaming across YouTube, X, and every major platform their team could command. The studio, a sleek loft in downtown Miami, was stripped to essentials. A black backdrop, 2 chairs, and a single spotlight that cast a warm glow on Lauren and Danielle Whitmore. Lauren, in a navy suit that radiated authority, stood tall, her curls framing a face etched with resolve. Beside her, Danielle, 50, wore a simple black dress, its clean lines a quiet defiance of the chaos swirling online. Her silver-streaked hair gleamed, and her eyes, sharp, unyielding, held a fire that could burn through steel. The chat exploded before they spoke, thousands of viewers flooding in, their comments a torrent of curiosity, support, and venom. Lauren stepped to the mic, her voice steady as a heartbeat. "Good evening. I'm Lauren Whitmore, CEO of Horizon Dynamics. Yesterday, we announced the termination of our $700 million merger with Novacore Group. Tonight, we're here to tell you why." The chat surged, emojis, questions, accusations. But Lauren didn't flinch. She recounted the merger's promise: global reach, innovation, jobs. Then her tone shifted, edged with steel. But promises mean nothing when built on disrespect. At the signing luncheon, my mother, Danielle Whitmore, was publicly humiliated by Novacore's leadership. "This isn't about a deal. It's about who we choose to stand with." She turned to Danielle, who rose, her presence commanding the room like a storm gathering strength. The camera zoomed in, capturing every line of her face, every flicker of emotion. Danielle's voice, when she spoke, was low but resonant, each word a stone dropped into still water. "I came to celebrate my daughter's triumph," she began, her gaze piercing the lens, as if addressing the world one soul at a time. Instead, Harrison and Celeste Vanderbilt, Novacore's leaders, assumed I was their help, Celeste said my dress matched their housekeepers. Harrison called me domestic, as if my place was cleaning their floors, not sitting at their table. She paused, letting the words sink in. They didn't just disrespect me. They disrespected every person who's fought to be seen, every mother who's sacrificed, every dream they've tried to diminish. The chat erupted. Stand with Danielle, Dr. Boycott Novacore. Heart emojis cascading like a digital ovation. Viewers shared the stream, and within minutes it was trending globally. Danielle continued, her voice unwavering. Horizon walked away because we don't partner with prejudice. Respect isn't negotiable, and no dollar amount changes that. She stepped back, her eyes meeting Lauren's, a silent handoff of strength. Lauren nodded, adding, This is who we are. Horizon builds futures, not chains. The live stream ended at 8:20 p.m., but its shockwaves were immediate. Clips of Danielle's speech ricocheted across X, TikTok, and Instagram, her words stitched into videos with captions like, A mother's stand and truth over money. By 9 p.m., your stand with Danielle was the top global trend, with influencers, activists, and everyday people amplifying her message. A Black entrepreneur posted, Danielle Whitmore just reminded us why we fight. A Latina server shared a story of being snubbed at a Novacore event. The posts piled up, each one a crack in Novacore's polished facade. In their Coral Gables mansion, Harrison and Celeste watched the live stream on a massive flat screen, their espresso cups forgotten on the table. Harrison's face reddened, his fists clenched. They're turning this into a circus, he spat, pacing the marble floor. Celeste, her pearls glinting in the chandelier's light, stared at the screen, her lips a thin line. She's lying, she said, but her voice wavered. The chat's vitriol, elitist scum, apologize now, was a mirror to their unraveling. Harrison grabbed his phone, dialing their PR chief. Bury this, he barked. Spin it as a stunt. But the world wasn't listening to their script anymore. By midnight, Novacore's stock had plunged 12%, a hemorrhage that sent investors into a frenzy. Financial analysts on late-night shows dissected the fallout, one calling it a masterclass in self-destruction. The Vanderbilt's post, once a weapon, now looked desperate, its lies exposed by Danielle's raw truth. In Coconut Grove, Danielle sat on her porch, a glass of iced tea in hand, her phone buzzing with messages from friends and strangers alike. You did it, Mama, read a text from Lauren. Danielle smiled, but her heart was heavy. She hadn't wanted the spotlight, only justice, and now the world was watching. Lauren, still in the studio, reviewed the metrics with Marcus. 2 million views and climbing, he said, his eyes wide. This isn't just trending, it's a movement. Lauren nodded, but her mind was on her mother. She'd seen Danielle's strength her whole life, but tonight was different. Danielle hadn't just spoken, she'd shifted the earth. Lauren texted her again. Thank you for being you. Then she turned to Marcus. Prep the board for tomorrow. Novacore's going to hit back. The backlash was swift. By dawn, Novacore's PR team released a statement. We regret any misunderstanding at the luncheon and remain committed to inclusive partnerships. It was bland, legalistic, and utterly unconvincing. Ex-users tore it apart, calling it too little, too late. A former Novacore intern posted a thread about being told to blend in at events, adding fuel to the fire. The narrative had slipped from the Vanderbilt's grasp, their empire wobbling under the weight of public scorn. Danielle woke to a flood of notifications, support from community leaders, a viral clip on CNN, even a message from a local pastor offering to pray with her. She read them quietly, her heart full but her mind clear. This wasn't about revenge, it was about standing tall. She called Lauren, who was already fielding calls from partners rallying behind Horizon. They're with us, Mom, Lauren said, her voice bright with hope. Your words changed everything. Danielle stepped into her garden, the morning sun warming her face. Hibiscus blooms nodded in the breeze, and she felt a peace she hadn't expected. The Vanderbilt's world was cracking, not because she'd swung a hammer, but because she'd spoken a truth too loud to ignore. She thought of her mother, who'd faced similar slights with quiet dignity, and vowed to carry that legacy forward. The live stream had been a spark, but the fire it lit was hers and Lauren's to tend. In the Vanderbilt mansion, silence reigned. Harrison stared at stock tickers, his empire bleeding. Celeste scrolled through X, her face pale as comments piled up. Danielle Whitmore is a queen. Nova Corps done. Their fortress of privilege was crumbling, and no amount of spin could save it. The truth was out, and the world had chosen its side. The Miami heat clung to the city like a fever, but inside the Vanderbilt mansion in Coral Gables, a chill had settled. It had been a week since Danielle Whitmore's live stream had set the world ablaze, and the Nova Corps group was hemorrhaging, stock down 18%, partnerships dissolving, and their once invincible name now a punchline on X. The dining room, with its mahogany table and crystal chandelier, felt more like a war room than a sanctuary. Harrison Vanderbilt, his gray hair disheveled, barked orders at a trembling PR team via speakerphone, his silk tie loosened like a noose. "Fix this!" he roared, slamming a fist on the table. Celeste, her cream blouse pristine but her eyes hollow, scrolled through her tablet, each headline a fresh wound. Nova Corps' elitism exposed. Vanderbilt's face boycott backlash. Their empire, built on decades of curated power, was crumbling, and the silence between them was louder than any argument. Across town in her Coconut Grove bungalow, Danielle Whitmore knelt in her garden, her hands deep in the soil as she planted a new hibiscus. The morning sun warmed her silver-streaked hair, pulled back in a loose braid, and her cotton tunic bore smudges of earth. Her phone, resting on a nearby bench, buzzed with notifications, support from strangers, a thank you note from a local activist, a clip of her live stream still trending. She ignored it, focusing on the rhythm of her work. The world's noise was a distraction. This, her garden, her peace, was her anchor. She'd spoken her truth, and though it had shifted the ground beneath Nova Corps, she felt no need to gloat. Her fight had never been about their downfall, only her dignity. Lauren, meanwhile, was in Horizon Dynamics' downtown office, a glass-walled space buzzing with urgency. Her navy blazer hung on a chair, her sleeves rolled up as she met with her board. The live stream had galvanized support. 3 new partners had reached out, and Horizon stock had stabilized. But the Vanderbilt silence worried her. "They're too quiet," she told Marcus, her COO, over coffee. "They're planning something." Marcus nodded, his brow furrowed. "We've got eyes on their moves. Whatever it is, we're ready." Lauren's phone pinged. An email from Nova Corps' legal team, marked urgent. She opened it, her breath catching. "They want to talk," she said, forwarding it to Danielle. "They're begging." Danielle read the email in her garden. Her pruning shears paused mid-cut. "Dear Ms. Whitmore, Nova Corps Group deeply regrets the incident at the luncheon and seeks to discuss reinstating the merger. We are prepared to issue a public apology and address all concerns." It was signed by Harrison himself, though the words reeked of Celeste's careful polish. Danielle's lips curved into a faint smile, not of triumph, but of clarity. "They're sorry now," she muttered, tucking her phone away. She called Lauren, her voice calm but firm. "They're not sorry, baby. They're scared. Don't let their desperation pull you back." Lauren, pacing her office, absorbed her mother's words. "They're offering everything. Apology, new terms, even a board seat," she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "What do I do?" Danielle's reply was swift, like a blade. "You don't need their table, Lauren. Build your own. Let them choke on their pride." Lauren exhaled, her resolve hardening. She drafted a polite rejection. "Horizon Dynamics appreciates your outreach, but remains committed to independent growth. We wish you well." She hit send, her heart racing but light. The Vanderbilts had underestimated them, and now they were scrambling. In the Vanderbilt mansion, the email landed like a grenade. Harrison read it aloud, his voice rising with each word. "Wish us well? They're mocking us." He hurled his phone across the room, shattering a vase. Celeste flinched, her pearls clicking as she stood. "They're children playing at power," she hissed, but her hands trembled. Their PR chief, on a video call, looked grim. "The boycott's growing. 2 major retailers pulled out this morning. You need to apologize. Publicly, sincerely." Or this gets worse. Harrison scoffed, but Celeste's eyes darted to the window, where a news van lingered outside their gates. The world was closing in. That afternoon, Novacor's board convened an emergency meeting, a tense affair in a glass-walled conference room overlooking Biscayne Bay. Harrison, red-faced, argued for a lawsuit, claiming Horizon had breached the contract. Celeste, quieter now, pushed for a softer approach. An apology video scripted to salvage their brand. The board, weary of their hubris, leaned toward the latter. "You insulted a woman on live TV," a director snapped. "Fix it or we're done." By evening, a draft apology was circulating. Novacor Group sincerely apologizes for the misunderstanding at the merger luncheon. We value inclusivity and regret any offense caused. It was cold, generic, and landed like a damp rag on X, where users tore it apart. Too late, Vanderbilts. Gonna stand with Danielle. Danielle, unaware of the apology, spent her evening cooking, jerk chicken, rice, and peas, the scents filling her bungalow with warmth. Lauren arrived exhausted but resolute, and they ate together, the weight of the day unspoken but shared. "They're begging, Mom," Lauren said, pushing her plate away. "But I don't trust them." Danielle nodded, her eyes soft but steely. "You don't need to. You've already won." She reached across the table, squeezing Lauren's hand. "This isn't about them anymore. It's about what you're building." The next morning, Harrison and Celeste tried one last gambit, a personal call to Lauren, routed through their lawyer. Harrison's voice, gruff and strained, offered concessions. "Name your terms, Ms. Whitmore. We'll make this right." Celeste, on speaker, added, "Let's move past this misunderstanding." Lauren listened, her face impassive, then declined. "Our values don't align," she said, hanging up. She texted Danielle, "It's over." Danielle, watering her hibiscus, read the message and let it settle. She didn't need their groveling. She'd already moved on. The Vanderbilts' world continued to unravel. Event invitations dried up, and a charity gala rescinded its keynote slot. On X, Miu's Your Boycott Novacor trended alongside memes of Celeste's sneer. Their stock slid further, and whispers of a board coup surfaced. Harrison drank scotch in his study, while Celeste stared at her reflection, her empire's cracks mirrored in her eyes. They'd underestimated Danielle, mistaking her quiet for weakness, and now their fortress was dust. Danielle in her garden felt the world shift but carried it lightly. She pruned her hibiscus, her hands steady, her heart full. The Vanderbilts' plea was a footnote, their empire a fading shadow. She'd stood for her truth, and the world had stood with her. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of fire, Danielle knew this wasn't the end. Just a new beginning, one she and Lauren would write together. The Miami sun hung low, bathing the open lot of Horizon Dynamics headquarters in a golden haze that felt like a blessing. It was a Saturday in late September, 3 months since Danielle Whitmore's livestream had shaken the corporate world, and the air buzzed with the vibrant chaos of Horizon's first Community Impact Day. Food trucks lined the perimeter, their smoky aromas mingling with the laughter of children darting between face-painting booths and book drives. Employees, their families and neighbors mingled under white tents, the crowd a tapestry of faces that reflected the city's soul. Danielle 50 stood beneath a canopy, her vibrant yellow dress a beacon of warmth, her silver-streaked hair catching the light. She handed out plates of jerk chicken, her smile as steady as the hands that had weathered decades of struggle. This was no corporate stunt. It was a homecoming, a testament to what she and Lauren had fought for. Lauren, in a white blouse and jeans, moved through the crowd, her curls bouncing as she hugged staff and high-fived kids. Her eyes, bright with purpose, kept finding her mother, as if anchoring herself to Danielle's presence. The Novacor debacle was a fading scar now. Horizon's stock had rebounded, new partnerships were flourishing, and the Vanderbilts' empire was a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms. But today wasn't about victory over enemies. It was about building something lasting. Lauren climbed onto a makeshift stage, the crowd quieting as she took the mic. "Today," she said, her voice carrying over the lot, "we're not just celebrating Horizon. We're celebrating who we are, together." Danielle watched from the tent, her heart swelling. She thought of the nights she'd spent teaching Lauren to read, the years of scraping by, the slight she'd swallowed to keep her daughter's dreams alive. The Vanderbilts' insult, Celeste's sneer, Harrison's smirk. They'd been a spark, but this moment was the fire. Lauren's voice grew stronger. I'm proud to announce the Whitmore Foundation, named for my mother, Danielle Whitmore. It'll fund tech education for underserved communities, because opportunity isn't a privilege, it's a right. The crowd erupted, applause rolling like thunder. Lauren gestured to Danielle. Mom, come up here. This is yours too. Danielle hesitated, her hands still clutching a stack of paper plates. The spotlight wasn't her place. She'd always been the strength behind, not the face in front. But the crowd's cheers, warm and insistent, pulled her forward. She climbed the stage, her yellow dress glowing under the lights, and stood beside Lauren, her eyes scanning the sea of faces, warehouse workers, interns, single mothers, kids with dreams bigger than their circumstances. Thank you, she said, her voice soft but clear. But this isn't about me. It's about all of us, building something that lasts. The applause swelled again, not thunderous but real, a shared heartbeat. As Lauren stepped down to mingle, a young employee, a black woman in her 20s named Kiana, approached Danielle, her eyes shy but determined. Ms. Whitmore, she said, clutching a soda can, I saw your live stream. My dad always said business is just money, no morals. You proved him wrong. Thank you. Danielle's smile deepened, her heart catching. No, baby, she said, touching Kiana's arm. Your dad's still learning. We all are. Kiana nodded, her eyes shining, and slipped back into the crowd. Danielle watched her go, feeling the weight of her words, not as a burden, but as a gift. The festival hummed on, music from a local band filling the air. Danielle returned to the food tent, serving plates alongside volunteers, her laughter mingling with theirs. She thought of her mother, who'd scrubbed floors to send her to college, and her grandmother who'd sung hymns through harder days. Their strength was in her bones, and now it was in Lauren, in Kiana, in every face here. The Whitmore Foundation wasn't just a name, it was a promise, a bridge from her past to a future she'd helped shape. Across town, in the Vanderbilt mansion, silence reigned. The once grand dining room was dim, the chandelier unlit. Harrison sat alone, a glass of scotch untouched, his empire reduced to a skeleton of its former glory. Novacor's stock hadn't recovered. Partners had fled, and the board was whispering of ousting him. Celeste, in a hotel in New York, dodged reporters, her pearls packed away, her social calendar empty. Their apology, late and hollow, had been a pebble against a tidal wave. The world had moved on, leaving them to choke on their pride. Danielle's truth had done more than wound them. It had rewritten their legacy as one of hubris. Back at the festival, Lauren took the mic again as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows. I walked away from $700 million, she said, her voice steady. People called me crazy, but this, she gestured to the crowd, the tents, the laughter. This is worth more than any check. The crowd roared, and Danielle, still serving plates, felt her eyes prickle. She thought of the live stream, the garden where she'd let the Vanderbilts' plea fade, the nights she'd prayed for Lauren's courage. This was their victory, not in dollars but in lives touched, futures opened. As the festival wound down, families lingered, reluctant to leave the warmth of the day. Danielle sat on a folding chair, a plate of untouched rice and peas in her lap, watching kids chase fireflies in the twilight. Lauren joined her face soft with exhaustion and joy. We did it, Mom, she said, leaning her head on Danielle's shoulder. Danielle squeezed her hand. You did it, baby. I just held the light. The lot emptied slowly, food trucks pulling away, volunteers stacking chairs. Danielle stood, brushing crumbs from her dress, and looked at the sky, now a canvas of stars. She thought of Kiana's words, of the foundation's first grant recipients already applying, kids from neighborhoods like the ones she'd grown up in. Her phone buzzed with a text from a community leader. You changed the game, Danielle. She smiled, pocketing it. The Vanderbilts were a memory, their plea a whisper she'd long forgotten. Her legacy wasn't in their downfall, but in the hands she'd lifted, the doors she'd opened. As she and Lauren walked to their car, the night air cool against their skin, A young boy ran up, his mother trailing behind. "Ms. Whitmore," he called, holding out a crayon drawing of a woman in a yellow dress. "This is you." Danielle knelt, her heart full, and took the paper. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said, her voice thick. The boy grinned and ran off, his mother mouthing a silent thank you. Danielle stood clutching the drawing and met Lauren's eyes. They didn't need words. Their bond said it all. The drive home was quiet, Miami's lights blurring past. Danielle thought of her mother's hands, rough from work but gentle in love, and knew she'd carry that love forward. The Whitmore Foundation was just the start, a seed planted in soil she'd tilled with her truth. She'd stood tall, not for fame, but for those who'd felt invisible, and the world had listened. As Lauren turned onto her street, Danielle closed her eyes, peace settling like a warm blanket. Her legacy wasn't what she'd left behind. It was what she'd lived through and what she'd refused to let die in silence. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey through Danielle's defiance. We hope Danielle and Lauren's story of courage and dignity has inspired you as much as it has us. What did you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. How did their stand resonate with you, and what would you have done in their shoes? Your voice matters, so let's keep the conversation going. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to catch our next tale of triumph and truth. Wherever you're tuning in from, we're grateful for you. See you in the next story.